So friends, in a moment on page 289, we will begin the Yizkor service formally. But before we do so, our custom here, our minhag at Beth Meyer, is to give people an opportunity to have some quiet time with each of their loved ones, people who we're holding in our heart. So I want to give this as a kavanah, an intention for that special time. Each of us takes precious, sacred time with people who are no longer here. And I want to set it in the following kavanah. This past summer, and Rabbi Jenny noted it in one of her drashot on Rosh Hashanah, we had the gift of doing some hiking. Many of you in the shul also enjoy the outdoors, both locally in our beautiful city and area and other places. And we were traveling in a national park, and in the national park, it had, in this one particular area, it was very well, it's not always well marked, but it was very well marked, and had a sign. And the sign was not so special per se. I kind of glanced at it. The sign dealt with logs and with standing trees, but specific types. And these I'm sure you've seen a million times here in Raleigh, as we are the city of Oaks, or on your own travels and your own hiking. There are, of course, the beautiful trees of different types you see that, expanses and styles and heights and canopies. And then there are the dead trees, right? The ones that no longer have leaves growing on them or have branches, or they kind of, they're miscolored and their bark has changed. Some of them don't even have a top anymore. Some of them fall because of storms. So there's actually a technical term, according to people in forestry, for trees that are still in the forest but are no longer alive. Some of you may know this. Okay, I learned it from this sign. One is called a snag tree, and one's called a nursing log. Well, nursing log makes sense. It's a log that's fallen down and it's just resting in a meadow. And a snag is a tree that's standing up, and you've seen this a million times, but it's no longer alive. It kind of no longer has branches or leaves anymore. It's just kind of like a log in the air, so to speak. So I honestly looked at this sign and thought, who really cares about these names? Like, why does it matter? A dead tree, why is it being given a special thing? Well, the sign went on to say, well, these logs play a special purpose in the ecosystem. The ones that are lying down are actually a space for animals and for mosses and other to hide and make nests and to actually create life from those nursing logs. In fact, it's called a nursing log because it nurses other life inside of it, even though it's no longer living. And so to the standing tree, the snag, the same thing. In fact, you can see sometimes like birds' nests, like they make a hole in that specific tree that's no longer alive. And at the end of this, as we are rabbis, we saw a sermon, okay? And it's specifically for Yizkor. Right? I mean, when I look at the forest, I think when most of us look at the forest, or look at our beautiful area, or even look at these gorgeous windows, we can see the trees. I mean, what we admire, what we see, what catches our eye is the blue of the sky and the green and the amazing pine in the city of Oaks. I mean, that's what makes sense to attract our eye. But what sustains the forest and sustains the ecosystem is actually the trees that are no longer alive but are still feeding us. I hope the metaphor is pretty clear. There are people that are no longer in this world that they were like bountiful trees at one point. I don't want to riff too much on the giving tree, but I think the idea is profound. There are people that give us their bark and their leaves and their water and their sap and their shade when they were alive. But the truth is, even when they're gone, they're still giving to us. They're not giving to us in the way, frankly, most of us would have preferred, to put it mildly. We'd rather have their boughs and their canopies strong. But when we think of them, when we're in tough life decisions and we hold them, when we hear their voices in our head, when we're in a conversation and we say, this is exactly what my grandmother would have said. She would have said this, and I find myself repeating it. They are still nursing us they are still feeding us because they are a part of us. So just like the snag tree and the nursing log are no longer giving leaves and creating that type of what we had, during Yizkor, we honor the fact that they are still giving us life. They are still sustaining us, even though it hurts. So in this quiet time, and I've said it before, I'll say it again, the Jewish way is you don't have to be strong. You don't have to pretend like it's not painful. If God created tears, this Yizkor is the reason. That's the reason for tears. This is the time to let it out. And so I invite you in the next few minutes to close your eyes, perhaps to cover yourself in your talit, or just take a moment and just picture the people you're holding in your heart who are no longer here. And maybe in the spirit of that teaching from the forest, maybe there's something or more than one thing you want to take a moment as you picture them to be grateful and thank them that they are still nourishing you. Because even though they are no longer part of the active forest, they still are part of the forest of our heart. And that's what Yizkor is about remembering them and holding them and thanking them for it. So we'll take a few minutes of quiet time for each of us to hold on to those that nourished us, and then we'll continue together on page 289 and 290.